Alright. Good evening, Walking Dead fans. We're back with another review. This time we're going to be talking about The Same Boat, Season 6, Episode 13. And this episode's pretty straightforward. We're not really going to have a lot to talk about as far as the content of the episode itself. It was a very Carol, Maggie episode. We had a lot of character development for those two, but not really a lot to progress our story for our group as a whole. So we'll kind of talk about the implications of that. But so what did you think of the episode?
Um, Paula died a lot faster than I expected her to. I really thought that she was going to make it out of this episode alive. Um, I mean, Rick and his crew showed up a lot faster than I expected them to. I mean, everything came to a head really quickly in this episode. So there was a lot of action, but it wasn't a lot of. We didn't get anywhere near Negan.
Right, I thought that this might be sort of stretched out over a couple of episodes as opposed to all of this being self-contained.
Right,
so.
and I thought they were going to travel a little further before it wrapped up. I didn't expect them to go one place and then that was the end. I kind of expected them to get closer to Negan before things went our way.
Right. Well, instead we had sort of a parallel story. We saw an underestimation of Carol as we had Paula talking about that the group was underestimating them, or the fact that they were either underestimating them or they were really stupid, and it was exactly what she was doing when it came to Carol and Maggie, thinking, and of course Carol did a really good job of acting like she does. She plays the victim really, really well because she, of course,
has been the victim for so long.
Right. So, of course, it was interesting to see where she could have gone if she had lost her humanity. That was sort of, that's where Paula was, is where Carol could go. And so I think now she's kind of reining that back a little bit, and we see this struggle within her. Like, she'll still obviously totally kill anybody at the drop of a hat to protect herself and to protect her family.
Right. But only if she absolutely has to.
Right. She's, after the last thing where she just shot the wolf in the middle of
the getaway with Denise.
Right, there you go. The getaway with Denise, exactly. That's what I was looking for.
Right.
When she kind of had that moment of hesitation after she shot him, and then she kind of saw that Denise and he were sort of helping each other, and
kind of realized that she may have goofed there and he may have been redeemable after all.
Perhaps. So,
right.
Not to speculate too much, but we did see kind of a lot of struggle within Carol.
Yeah, almost instant remorse.
Right. Next we have, we talked about a little bit about Carol and Paula, the kind of leader, and their parallels, but we also have a similar situation going on with Maggie and Shell, the one that takes her off to interview her about where it is that they come from. They figure obviously a pregnant woman in the apocalypse is obviously living in a relatively stable place, and since they don't recognize them, I suppose they figure that this
is a place they haven't been to before.
Right.
So obviously there's a community they have yet to exploit, as they have exploited the hilltop, and so they need to know where that pack of resources is. Then, of course, we learned about Shell having been pregnant in the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really talk about how she lost the baby, but she lost the baby.
And I could be reading a little bit into it myself, but to me it kind of seemed like there was the illusion there that there was something slightly nefarious about that. Like, it didn't seem to me like it was just a simple miscarriage. Now, Beth, you just took it as
malnutrition in the apocalypse. She couldn't supply enough for both, and the baby was lost. I mean, it happens.
Right, and that totally makes sense, but to me it seemed like I don't know if it was, she seemed a little bit bitter or something of that nature, and I don't know if, it was just the fact that she was also missing a finger, that maybe that that seemed like something that, maybe, we threw you down a flight of stairs, quote unquote, to teach you a lesson, after we cut your finger off, sort of thing. I mean, I know that's not exactly how it worked, and that's a pretty horrible thing to say, but
I think that's a bit far, and I think any mother who loses a baby at any point is a sad, sad person for a while and has a right to be bitter. So there's a chance it's just that. Plus, why does Maggie get to have a baby when she didn't? So there's a lot of that.
Okay, I could definitely see that. So she also makes the point during this exchange that she tells Maggie that their group aren't the good guys. And I mean, we've definitely run into a gray area, if nothing else. I mean, our survivors, are they the good guys anymore? We've kind of talked about this in the last episode.
Right. The new town motto for Alexandria: mercy for the lost, vengeance for the plunderers. And if anyone we've met so far qualifies as plunderers, you'd have to say that Negan's group, the Saviors, does. They literally come in, kill someone publicly in front of everyone to terrorize them into literally giving them half of everything they produce until the end of time. That's plundering.
Right. And I understand, but we haven't actually, this is all information that we're getting, and granted, I know that Jesus has proven to be a clutch player, but at the same time, Gregory is kind of a
weasel.
Right. That's a good way to put it. And so we've kind of seen where that goes. So how do we know really what the story is as far as, Negan goes? We had one run-in, obviously, with Daryl and that, in that group, and that went poorly, not obviously for our side, but just in general.
It looked pretty bad to start with. I mean, I don't know why they stopped the truck to begin with. I guess we just had to get some kind of introduction to the Negan story. But and now we know who the hoopty was at the top of the hill when that group got blown up.
But short of some posturing,
right.
We really don't know a whole lot about the Saviors.
The first room that Glenn went into, and the second guy that he had to tap because Heath couldn't do it, that guy had that wall of Polaroids of smashed-in faces that were bright red, bloody smears. Those were obviously people.
Where I said, Glenn,
walkers.
These weren't good people. So obviously you shouldn't have worried about it. Right.
So, I mean, at least those guys were personally about bad guys.
Right. And so I do see where you're coming from there, but this does show that there are indeed two sides to every story. I mean, who knows, what kind of, blackmail or whatever else, if they were holding somebody from this group hostage, or, I mean, again, these are the kind of people that cut off fingers and
that's punishment for stealing and
for stealing gasoline. I mean, granted, which at this point in time is probably a very scarce commodity, but at the same time, I mean,
I just think that it is remarkable the difference between Shell's bitterness over having been pregnant in the apocalypse versus Maggie's joy to have made the choice to live in spite of the apocalypse, and then Paula, who said as soon as she hit double digits, she stopped caring about killing people. And Carol went the other way around. She didn't really start keeping track until she hit double digits. And that's when she started to feel bad about it.
Right.
Like, really feel bad about it.
And so, we've seen the two sides of Carol,
remarkably opposite.
Right. Is Carol losing her edge?
I still think that she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I think that she will do what she has to do no matter what. But not at the cost of Maggie, and that's the only reason she wanted it to be anyone but Maggie, because she could have easily just handled herself if it had been anybody else. With Maggie, she had to take the other person in consideration.
Alright. Well, that's a fair point there. Well, then we have them. I hesitate to say a little bit because we had the situation where Carol keeps trying to either run away herself. She tells Paula to run away. She gives her several opportunities. She's holding her at gunpoint. She's just like, run away, just leave. And the same thing when, she's there with Maggie. She's like, I think we can sneak by them. We can get out of here. As opposed to, I think old school Carol, like at the time of Terminus, it's just like she'd just go in there and blow them all up and, wouldn't even think twice about it. So obviously she does have a little bit of remorse at this point with whatever this, like I said, this situation is where she's kind of counting now.
Right. But then we have that moment on the radio where she not only says, meet us here, she says, meet us on the kill floor. And she does it with as much Paula attitude as she can manage through the tears.
Right.
Meet us on the kill floor.
Right.
Like...
And even though she obviously, has hesitation about killing any of them, she does it for Maggie. Essentially, like, I don't know if it's to protect Maggie necessarily from having to do it herself, but she just walks over there, even though she's sort of against the idea. She still walks over, throws a cigarette into the room, and
closes the door,
seals everybody in to burn.
And it's Maggie who has to drag her away from the screams because she's sobbing against the door.
So, then of course we are reunited with everyone else, and we have the big scene with Daryl and Carol where they're hugging it out. And they've been such great support for each other all throughout this time, and I'm glad that they were able to have that moment despite the Tobin relationship developing. Like I said, I've always seen these two, Daryl and Carol, as more of a friendship thing, and I think this was right where I would want it to be, where I would expect it to be.
And I disagree. I feel like he's always been her personal savior. He knows that she can do it herself most of the time, but when she can't, he is always the one who picks her up.
Well, I mean, right, but I don't see that being a romantic thing.
Yeah, it could be.
Well, we have 3 episodes left, so obviously there's going to be a lot of things that will be happening, so we'll have to kind of say what our predictions are for next time. Okay, so now we'll have I have a couple of questions that came up, of course, throughout this episode, and then we have kind of a sort of fun thing to throw in here, some sort of prediction deal. While I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about Maggie and Carol here. We have this situation at the end with Primo.
Right, Primo.
Right? And, Rick shoots him when he claims...
When he says, I'm Negan, shithead.
Right, so he
said, I'm sorry it had to come to this. Shoots him in the eye.
Right, so we know that Carol and Maggie know that he wasn't Negan, and that, of course, we had Malls said that they were all Negan earlier, and never really explained that.
And he said, was Negan there last night or here today? Well, both. Because he was there yesterday and they were there today, so Negan was in both places. Right. If they're all Negan,
so yeah. Are they going to let Rick think that was it, that was everybody, or are they going to let him know that he wasn't Negan himself? Or
Maggie was in the room with Shell when that conversation happened. It was Paula, Malls, and Carol alone. Mm-hmm. So Maggie didn't hear the "we are all Negan" part. Carol's the one who knows.
True.
So has she gotten to the point where she doesn't want to take lives anymore, where she will keep it to herself to protect the group from Negan?
Right, much like she was keeping the information about Morgan to herself, the fact that he was keeping the wolf and all that good stuff.
Yeah, and also the group that they killed in the kill floor, that was the scout group. They were 30 minutes out. 30 minutes out in a car. So how far is the range on these walkie-talkies?
Right.
They radioed far enough ahead to get a scout group that was 30 minutes out by car on the radio clear enough on a backup channel to have communication. So how far out can those scouts radio, and how far down the line to Negan has the warning gone?
Right. So then the next thing is there was a lot of talk this episode about a baby in the apocalypse, and so this is kind of a little close to home in this particular situation. I mean, obviously there's not an apocalypse going on around us right now, despite what a lot of people think with our current election situation and all that good stuff. You know, we have a lot of people that think all kinds of crazy things, not supporting one side or the other, but it does get a little bit heavy in the rhetoric sometimes. But so, what do we think of the idea of a baby in the apocalypse? Obviously, we've heard some information from what Abraham thinks. You know, at first he definitely wasn't sure, but then maybe by the end of the episode, it seemed like maybe he did want to make the pancakes with the Bisquick.
With Sasha.
then you know, obviously we have what Glenn and Maggie's opinion on the matter is. They've kind of gone over that, but you know, what's your opinion if you were in the Walking Dead universe as opposed to the universe that we currently live in?
I was pretty much of the same opinion as Lori. Childbirth in the apocalypse is basically a death sentence. Especially if you have to have a C-section. And since that's where I am, and we're pregnant now, that's really close to home for me. And if Maggie were in my situation, her life would definitely be at risk. So it's a huge choice to put the next generation before yourself, and that's literally what she's doing.
We figured as kind of a fun thing after going through the episode itself, we would look at who we thought had a chance of dying, the least likely to survive the end of this particular season. Obviously, we know some big things are coming. We've heard a lot of stuff about what was coming from the comics, of course. We have heard some rumblings about Negan there.
Right, and then we've seen a lot of the cast response to having read the script, and for them to be so disturbed that they were physically ill or couldn't speak about it for days, that's a little terrifying considering what we've seen so far. I mean, what they've seen so far.
Right, and you know, full disclosure, neither one of us have really read the comics. We've picked up some things here and there over our course of, you know, reading on Twitter and Facebook and things like that, but nothing firsthand. So all of this is sort of coming from just being fans of the show and seeing where it goes. So we kind of made a list of we started with a list of all of the characters, and we decided we should just kind of do what we thought were the top 5 sort of individually. And so for mine, I have Gregory, Aaron, Abraham, Daryl, and then for this last one, I kind of flip-flopped around as to who I thought it might be. I kind of had Morgan on the list at first, and I think that Morgan is still a really good candidate. I might even switch somebody else out on this next one, but initially we were talking about Tara and Heath and how we were trying to work out where everybody went by the end of this episode. Some people had gone back to Alexandria.
Heath went out on a run. He said goodbye to Glenn and said, I can't do this and I need to get away. And then he's got in the camper. And I think he and Tara went on a run together, and that she and Denise had talked about it before she left and actually said, I was going on a 2-week run after this, so I won't see you for 2 weeks. And Denise said, that's okay, I'll tell you then.
Right. And even though we initially sort of thought, well, maybe that means that they're safe for now. Um, I'm not really so sure, especially after sort of going back over and thinking about the situation with uh, Daryl and Abraham when they went,
and Sasha on the road.
when they were
What
on the road
if they
before.
get stopped by another group of Negan's men? They don't have the rocket launcher. Will Tara and Heath be able to stand up against a bunch of human bad guys?
Right.
Like, we know they can hold their own against walkers, but
and so
he had trouble taking a life even when he had to save his own.
If I'm gonna swap out somebody off of my list for one of them, I'd probably go with swapping out Abraham. And I'm not really sure whether I want to say whether it be Tara or Heath. I know that The Walking Dead has a really bad history when it comes to the black guys. So we had that one at a time almost rule there for a while. So that kind of makes me want to say, just to defy that stereotype, that Tara might be in trouble on that count. I'm not really super solid on that, but that kind of changes up my list to be Gregory, Aaron, then Tara, and then perhaps Daryl and Morgan. And do you need any rationale for any of those? I mean, what's your list?
I go Aaron, Gregory, Morgan, Eugene, and Carol.
Okay. Now, obviously, Aaron, I kind of talked about in our last video why I think that, he's kind of set himself up, and you did too, sort of.
Right. Kind of as a martyr because he feels guilty about leading the wolves to Alexandria, and he even says it when he stands up in the church. We have to take it to them before they come to us. I won't let it happen here again.
Right.
And I don't think that bodes well for him. And then Gregory, because I think either he will have an encounter with Negan that will not go well, or he will have an encounter with Rick where it comes out that he betrayed them to Negan, and that will not go well.
When we were discussing that earlier, that's kind of where I was thinking, because at this point we have this group of the Saviors. I mean, regardless of, we're sure that it's not the core group. As my theory before was that this was like a little offshoot camp that they sort of, filtered all of their supplies through so that nobody saw the main group. And so even if this particular, satellite base was taking in supplies from more than just Hilltop, they're obviously going to know that Hilltop is one of the places that they can go look. Well, if you show up with a big group of men at Hilltop, number one, those people, they aren't going to, shed any blood to save Rick's people. And Gregory definitely isn't. We've seen what kind of person he is. So
right.
I think he would easily flip on him if somebody else in town doesn't either. And so at that point, it's just, does, one of Negan's folks kill him as an example because they already said that they wanted his head?
Right.
Or does Rick do it, or one of Rick's group do it because of the betrayal? But one way or the other, I think that he's toast.
Right.
Same sort of thing with Aaron. I still think that's pretty highly likely for him. So I'm not sure
right.
as to whether first or second there, but they're both really high on our list, obviously.
So then I have Morgan, which is way higher than you have Morgan on your list. I'm slightly concerned that jail cell is not entirely intended for Negan, and that he's trying to rehabilitate himself again, because he's now faced with the group going off to kill humans, and said that Rick said everybody here has to accept that we are going to kill them, and we are all responsible for that, whether you go or not.
Well, either that or, he's going to have to leave, and Rick has pretty much put him in that catch-22 sort of situation. It's like, you don't necessarily have to kill anybody, but you have to accept it or get out. And so
right.
Is that his way of accepting it, or is he doing that as a way to try to make it to where we don't have to kill everybody, we can just take out...
Put in a jail cell.
Right. And so in that case, and the reason why he is on my list is maybe he goes, or when, Negan's people show up or whatever, Morgan tries to talk to them, or, tries
or whatever,
to go...
and they just bash his head in because
right.
they don't negotiate.
Right, and that would make some people quite happy from what I've seen. They're kind of tired of Morgan's ways now that he is all about, keeping everybody alive, how all life is sacred and whatnot.
Right. Let's see. And then I have Eugene.
Who's not on my list at all.
Right. And I have him because he had a personal moment of revelation and growth that was huge when he finally actually got up and fought to survive. So even though that kind of redeemed him to Rosita, I don't see them going long term if Abraham survives.
Right.
Just because it'll be too weird with Abraham in close proximity. So it's kind of between Abraham and Eugene for me in that spot.
Okay, and then your last one?
My last one was Carol.
Right, and I used to have Carol on my list, but now I think after tonight's episode that I think that she is safe for now. Now, I'm not saying that she's going to survive, through very much of next season, especially depending on who it is that goes, especially if it's Daryl, or if Tobin dies with that relationship. I'm not really sure that Carol can take much more death after what she's been through. Now, granted, I know that she's a very strong character, and that was one of the themes is how she has managed to come through this. But I don't know how much more they can put her through realistically.
Right, which is one of the reasons why I think that she might be going out soon. Because there's not a lot more they can put her through.
Right. Okay, well, let us know what you think in the comments as to who you think the most likely person to suffer the wrath of Negan is. Will it be Daryl because he killed off a giant group of his men? Will it be Glenn, just to parallel what's in the comics?
Is it going to be Abraham first off the bat because that's how it is in the comics?
Who knows? We'll have to see. But we're happy. We're really looking forward to seeing what happens in the next 3 episodes, and I'm interested to see what you folks out there think. So until next time, we'll see you next week.